Another desperately cold morning across the south central United States. We keep on hearing about what's going on in Texas, prolonged cold after unusual snow, and a variety of other disasters occurring down there. Some of them man-made, and some of them, of course, related to the weather. So on the coasts of the country today, I should start out with the central United States. You can see it's dominated by high pressure all the way from International Falls down to near Tulsa, Oklahoma, and then to the Rio Grande Valley. So that's covering the central part of the country. We get a little bit of lake effect snow in the immediate lee of Lake Michigan. A little bit more organized weather across the northeastern United States and along the Atlantic coast. We'll see that displayed in the satellite movie. None of this is associated with a very deep, that is intense cyclone, and we'll see evidence of that fact as well on the satellite. But there are nonetheless widespread snows across much of southern New York State, much of southern New England, parts of eastern Pennsylvania, and northern New Jersey, and then rain down along the coast into the far eastern Gulf of Mexico. And with this region and on the west coast, some unsettled weather, but again, not particularly well developed. There's a better looking storm well up to the north in the northwestern portion of British Columbia. That's off this map. We'll see that on the satellite in that location. But with this giant region of high pressure sitting in the central United States, temperatures are still quite low across the midsection of the country. As you can see right here, we're talking about temperatures below zero, first of all, in North Dakota and at International Falls, and then in the single digits to maybe 10 or 15 degrees across much of the upper Midwest, and 16 degrees this morning at 8:30 a.m. in Dallas. This is just unbelievable. 26 in Houston. These people do not see several days in a row with temperatures like this. 10 degrees in Amarillo and 11 in Lubbock. This is really desperately cold air that has settled in and will stay there for at least another couple of days in the central plains of the United States. The map on the East Coast looks quite like it did on Wednesday. The peninsula of Florida is quite warm everywhere south of Jacksonville, which is 53. We're in the mid-70s already in Tampa, in Miami, and in the 20s along much of the coast all the way down almost to Norfolk, Virginia, where there maybe finally the temperature gets above freezing. So a really chilly 19th of February. And to top off what's been going on this month, here's a map compiled I forget where now, somewhere the Iowa Environmental Mesonet puts this together. And this is February's at all these various locations, the maximum consecutive number of hours at all those locations that stayed below zero for the month of February. This is ending at 8 p.m. last night. And you can see here in southern Wisconsin, we had a period of time between 24 and 72 straight hours where the temperature didn't get above zero. That was probably last Saturday into Monday morning. But further north near International Falls, you're into the light blue or the dark blue. You're talking about 216 to 264 hours. That's 10 and a half days, 264 hours. Or actually, that's 11 days. So we're talking about more than a week where the temperature stayed below zero consecutively. And even down in Arkansas and Texas, you had 1 to 4 hours where you had the temperatures below zero in places like Dallas. Unbelievable, isn't it? And Little Rock and St. Louis was on the order of 8 to 12 hours with temperatures below zero. So this is really unbelievable how persistent this cold air has been across the central part of the United States, especially. Okay. So let's move now to a picture, an animation of the satellite imagery from the continental United States and adjacent waters that we can see here on this map. And you can see the only really substantial cloud element in the entire satellite movie is one that stretches from the Yucatan Peninsula of Mexico across the central part of the panhandle of Florida and then out offshore. And it's on the far western periphery of this cloud mass, evident here in the infrared satellite movie, where there's substantial precipitation, especially late in the period over New England, parts of New York, and Pennsylvania. So that's weather system number one. And you can see it doesn't look anything like the intense, nicely wrapped up counterclockwise swirling storms that we've seen in various other places around the globe, even this long into the semester. This is not really a well-organized weather system, but it doesn't matter every time. You can still get reasonably intense and impactful weather from not so well put together weather systems, and this is a nice example of that. And then across the western part of North America, part of the United States and part in Canada, you can see some cloud mass coming across Idaho, Wyoming, parts of Colorado, and we saw a little bit of activity on the surface map in that location. It's kind of scattered snow showers, maybe rain in some warm valleys, places like that. And then immediately off the west coast, not really any significant weather off the Pacific Northwest, unlike Monday and Wednesday. And also, that's true also off the coast of California. We'll get a better view of that in just a minute. So let's now go to a view of the radar across the country, and that's right here. And you can see across the 48 states, the only substantial place where it's precipitating is, first of all, is a little bit in the lee of Lake Michigan here into southwestern Michigan off the lake. That's a little bit of lake effect. And then this is the storm that is spreading some scattered precipitation, mostly in the form of snow in New England and New York, Pennsylvania, and then rain along the coast. But remember, this is the far western periphery of that cloud mass that we just saw on the satellite movie. So there's a lot of precipitation associated with this not so well organized weather system. And anytime there's precipitation falling in the wintertime, you have to worry about icing at least later in the day, perhaps, and in some places accumulating snow. And here in the west, you can see some scattered rain showers coming through the Puget Sound area to the west, the east of Portland. And then these are scattered snow showers over Montana, Wyoming, and Idaho, and a little bit of scattered activity across the central or northern valley in California. But a pretty nice day, precipitation-wise, across much of the broad United States. And here's the satellite movie from the west coast of our country. And in contrast to what we saw off the East Coast, which was a not so well organized weather system, this thing right here off the far northwest coast of British Columbia is a really nice looking, nicely organized weather system, especially early in this 12-hour loop, where you can see a strong counterclockwise circulation around that disturbance. But it gets shredded as it makes contact with the mountains of British Columbia and the Yukon Territory right along the coast. And so the circulation can't be maintained in the face of that extraordinary friction. And then this little cloud patch right here is developing in very, very cold air aloft, and that's going to take on a little bit of an organization later on in the day today. So if you're living in Seattle, like I was for graduate school, you'd see this thing on the satellite picture, and you'd say, okay, later on today we're going to have some maybe steady precipitation and then punctuated perhaps with some hailstones later in the day, and it'll be an exciting weather day for us in Seattle. And then you can see what we saw earlier this week, the cloud streak coming all the way from Hawaii, which is very obvious here because the clouds are on top of the map boundary. And that was a very strong stream into the northwest United States. It's much weaker today. It's almost dilapidated and gone away. And then unsettled weather prevails at and to the west of the dateline. And we can't see any better view of that from the current satellite. So the west coast is a little bit quiet. There'll be some weather in Portland and Seattle today with this cloud mass as it's getting itself organized on the southern end of a cold pool. And that cold pool is in the wake of this storm up over the northwest part of British Columbia. And since it's Friday, let's take a look at our forecast at 850 millibars. So this will be every 12 hours. It was a forecast made last night, and this is the forecast valid this morning. And you can see in the purple, there's still a substantial chunk of pretty cold air sitting over the Great Lakes states and maybe pushed a little bit further to the west over the Dakotas. The really cold air is up over the archipelago of Canada, and it isn't going to move for these next several days. It's going to sit there and rotate, and we'll have a little bit of cold funneling down into the central U.S. Meanwhile, in Texas, you've got temperatures below zero at 850 millibars. That's unusual even at this level, which is a mile above sea level over much of the state of Texas. So let's look at what happens in Texas as the week goes on. And here's the front edge of the really extraordinary cold air mass that settled southward out of western Canada into the central U.S. and now has made its way all the way down to most of the Central American peninsula and gone through all the way through Mexico, especially east coastal Mexico, quite cold compared to what it usually is right now. So let's keep going. We'll go 12 hours at a time. This is now valid tonight. And you can see the cold air stays pretty much placed right over Wisconsin. You can't get a much colder spot at 850 millibars than the state of Wisconsin and the Arrowhead of Minnesota tonight at 6 p.m. And it looks like it's a little bit warmer in Texas by this time. We'll go all the way now to Sunday night, much warmer in western Texas. Suddenly you've got temperatures that rise into the 15 to 16 degrees above zero over the panhandle, the Rio Grande Valley, western Texas. So that means Texas is going to finally warm up during this weekend. The cold slug stays over Quebec, and we stay pretty chilly, although look at the winds going across the isotherms across the Mississippi River boundary with Minnesota and Iowa. That's warm air advection for us at 850 millibars on Saturday night. And it gets and then it comes through on Sunday, so Sunday might not be too bad a day. We might get above freezing. It's possible for the first time in I don't know how long, maybe 15 or 16 days. But it won't last because there's not really a sustained warming. Meanwhile, Texas, by early morning Sunday, really does start to moderate. And so excursions to Mexico to get away from the cold, as have been reported in the news this week, probably won't be necessary later in the week in Texas. And here we go into Monday morning. And once again, stays pretty chilly over the Great Lakes states, but nothing like what it was started today and into tomorrow morning. The very cold air stays well north of even the Canadian archipelago. This is over the Arctic Ocean now. And we're kind of flooded with weak but persistent warm advection across the central part of the country. By Tuesday morning, some of that warm advection gets even more strongly organized over the central plains of the United States, maybe a little bit south of us, but nonetheless, a little bit of warming, persistent warming in Texas is nice, good news for the poor people suffering down there. And this is now Wednesday afternoon, very warm across the whole state of Texas, but yet another substantial cold air mass and the front boundary of it coming right through the panhandle in Oklahoma, parts of northwestern Missouri. And here comes some cold air. Looks like it's headed straight towards us for the end of next week. And here's Thursday morning. That cold push misses us a little bit, but it's going to hit New York State, parts of Ohio, and certainly New England. We won't get warm, but we won't get as cold as some of those places somewhat adjacent to us to the east. And then here's the cold frontal boundary that has made its way installed maybe in northern Texas, sparing Dallas, certainly sparing Houston by Thursday, but not sparing Amarillo and Lubbock. They're going to be cold again as well. And so we'll see what happens with that. In the next 12 hours, a little cyclone develops along the Red River Valley there on the border between Oklahoma and Texas, along that temperature contrast region. And then that storm dies a little bit as it moves to the north and east. And it does cool off a little bit in Texas, but not cold. It's not going to be like it has been this week by the end of the coming week. This is now Friday. And so by Friday night, the really cold air is pooling for yet another advance in the western part of the United States. And so we may find some really cold temperatures somewhere in our vicinity. I'd say the Dakotas, Montana, and Wyoming are good bets early in the month of March. Okay, so that's the last movie, but last image. This is what I'm worried about for the week following the coming week. We do have one more push of really cold air. This has been an unusual month of February. We will be well below normal by the time it's all over, and this might get us to record below normal temperatures if its trajectory is got a target of Madison, Wisconsin on it for it. We may really be in for the cold.